The Star Trek game for the Nintendo Entertainment System (NES), released in 1991, is a space-themed action-adventure that attempts to bring the iconic science fiction series to the 8-bit console. It puts players in the shoes of the legendary Captain Kirk and his crew aboard the USS Enterprise, as they embark on missions to explore the galaxy, engage in space battles, and combat various enemies like the Klingon, Romulans, and, of course, the Borg. While the game offers some intriguing elements for Star Trek fans, it has its share of strengths and weaknesses that influence the overall experience. Pros: authentic Star Trek feel. The game succeeds in capturing the essence of Star Trek. Players get to control the famous crew of the USS Enterprise, including Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, and Dr. McCoy. The dialogue and story elements evoke the spirit of the original 1960s series, and you even get to interact with the iconic Starship Bridge crew. Variety of missions. The game features a variety of gameplay mechanics, from navigating through space, exploring planets, and engaging in starship combat. Each mission is different, which helps break up the potential monotony and adds a layer of diversity to the gameplay. The player has to manage the ship's resources, make decisions, and carry out strategic moves, which adds depth to the experience. Space battles and strategy. The space combat sections are perhaps the most memorable part of the game. Players control the USS Enterprise in tactical space battles against enemy ships, which adds excitement and a sense of action. The combat is turn-based, with the player choosing from different types of attacks and maneuvers, much like a strategic space battle. Nostalgic for fans. For those familiar with the original Star Trek series, the game is a treat. The music, sounds, and character designs feel like they're pulled straight from the show. The inclusion of iconic characters and settings adds an extra layer of fun for Star Trek fans who want to experience the franchise in a different medium. Cons: limited graphics and sound. As with many early NES games, the graphics are quite basic and do not fully capture the grandeur of the Star Trek universe. The spaceship designs, planets, and space battles are pixelated and lack detail. The sound design, while attempting to mimic the series' music, can be repetitive and does not offer much variation, making it grating during long play sessions. Repetitive gameplay. While the game offers a variety of missions, many of the tasks can feel repetitive after a while. The space battles, while strategic, lack the variety needed to keep them interesting over time. The exploration segments on planets can also feel like filler, as they often involve walking around and talking to static NPCs with little variety in interactions. Slow progression and difficulty. The game's progression can be slow, especially for new players. The complexity of managing resources and making strategic decisions can be daunting, and the difficulty ramps up quickly without clear guidance. Some players may find themselves stuck on certain missions, as the game doesn't always provide the clearest instructions on what needs to be done next. Lack of depth in storyline. While the game makes an effort to stay true to the Star Trek universe, the storyline lacks the depth and complexity that fans of the franchise might expect. The narrative feels simplistic, with a few generic missions that don't really delve into the rich world-building and character development that made Star Trek iconic. It's more about completing tasks than experiencing an engaging narrative. Clunky controls. The controls can feel unresponsive and clunky at times, especially during space battles and when trying to navigate around the bridge. Players may find it frustrating when trying to execute specific actions, as the game doesn't always respond as expected, which can detract from the overall enjoyment. Conclusion. Star Trek for the NES is a mixed bag for fans of the franchise and gamers alike. While it does capture the spirit of Star Trek with its variety of missions, iconic characters, and strategic space battles, it is hindered by outdated graphics, repetitive gameplay, and occasionally confusing controls. The lack of a deep storyline and limited mission variety also prevents the game from becoming a truly memorable experience. However, for those nostalgic for the early days of Star Trek video games, it's an enjoyable, if somewhat flawed, adventure that offers a glimpse into what Star Trek games could be on the NES.